Welcome to the Altair SimLab tutorial. In this tutorial, we will see how to generate the CAD-based hex bolts. The problem description is, we will see how to create the 3D bolts from CAD bolts using different options, how to create pretension load using create, and how to copy and reposition the bolts. The first step is to open the model, open the .slb file. Once the model has been opened, the second step is to generate the TET mesh. Go to Mesh, TET mesh. Here we'll be using the TET10 curved edges to generate the mesh. Select the bodies, enter the average element size as 6, the internal grading as 1.7, and the quality parameters as shown, and say OK. Replace the mesh in the existing model and say OK. So once the TET mesh has been generated, the third step is to import the bolt CAD. Go to File, Import, select the CAD option, and select the parasolid file and say Open. Enter these details and say OK. So you can see here the bolt CAD data has been imported. The fourth step is to create the 3D bolts from the CAD data. Go to Advanced Bolt Modeling. So the first option we will see using the bolted joints. Click on bolted joints. Enter the mesh size as 2 and the angular division as 16. You can see there are some details which has been highlighted regarding this. Select one of the bolt from the assembly browser and say OK. So the bolt has been created. So let's hide and see the other two options which are available to create the bolts. Go to Mesh, Hex Mesh. So we will see how to use the screw mesh. So enter the mesh size as 2 again and number of element along the surface as 16. Select one of the bolt CAD data and say OK. So this is the second method of generating the bolt. Okay, so let's hide the other FE also, and we'll see the third method. Again, go to Mesh, Hex, and we'll use the axisymmetric mesh to generate the bolt mesh. Select the bolt again and enter the parameters here and say OK. So you can see that the mesh has been generated for the bolt using the axisymmetric option. So you can use either of the one option from this. Okay, so we'll be using the bolted joint option, and you can review the details of the mesh controls in the mesh control tab. So we're just isolating the bolt mesh which was been created from the bolted joint. So the next step is to create the pretension load. Go to Advanced Bolt Modeling and select the option called Solid Pretension. Here we'll be using the option called Create. And let's define the plane. Select 3 nodes as shown here. Just say OK. Select the body. Enter the values as shown here. And there are some details on the pretension load. Say OK. So hide one of the face to visualize the solid pretension that has been created. So the next step is to align the pretension face. Go to Geometry, Features, Align. We'll be using the plane option here. So also isolate the cover part, hide the bolt face, and define the plane using planar faces. Select the bottommost face of the cover, say OK, and select the bottom face of the bolt and say apply and say yes. So the pre-tension face has been aligned here. So the next step is how to reposition the first bolt. So go to transform. Here we'll be using the option as position and we will see using the arc circle method. Select the circle edge of the bolt first and also the destination circle. Deactivate the copy option and say OK. So the position of the first bolt has been done. So the next step is to copy the bolts with pre-tension. Go to transform. Again, you will be using the position option and the arc circle method. So the first select the arc circle of a movable body and destination circles as shown here. This time activate the copy with loads and boundary condition option and say OK. So you can see like rest of the bolts has been generated with the solid pre-tension load.